How's it, guys? This is Tuesday night. I'm sitting here in my little studio. Due to curfews, I can't be at my other studio yet, but we'll make a plan. We had a good time on Friday doing our virtual sound check. Apologies for the bit of technical issues we had there. It was the first stream that we did from the office. It'll be a lot better on this coming Friday, by the way. Like we said, we're going to be doing a virtual sound check on the Soundcraft VI series. And I've actually lined up a real drummer for us, so we're going to do it in real time. Marlon Green is going to come in. He's Pearl endorsed. We've got a nice Pearl Masters series in our music room there. So we're just going to do a quick mic up the drum kit, talk a little bit about miking, but the main focus is going to be on virtual sound check. So we'll record with some glitches on purpose, some irregular gain check, so we can do a virtual sound check and come back to fixing it on the console. And then how do you deal with going back to the preamps, having done a virtual sound check with incorrect signal strengths. If you remember correctly, the one thing that I said quite clearly on Friday and last week when we spoke about it, one of the most crucial points in your virtual sound check is your signal path from the source, the capturing stage, consistency of your capturing stage. Your whole team being aware of the fact that you're doing virtual sound checks, so they've got to pay detailed attention to mic positions. If you're moving with the band, making sure you're keeping your mics, travel with your mics. Try and even go as far as keeping cable lengths the same, because if you go from a standard 5-meter cable length and all of a sudden your drum kit's on the other side of the stage with 25 meters of submult and 10-meter cables and all that. There's subtle differences, but obviously you lose some signal and it's a little bit different. But that's the core element of the whole thing. So the one thing that we need to consider is also we did it on the S6L on Friday. S6L obviously integrated with Pro Tools seamlessly, so we're getting a very nice correspondence between the two platforms. So when you do virtual sound check, you do gain checks, you come back to the preamp, it applies for you and it's a great seamless workflow. You can have a very similar workflow on any other console. The key thing is maintaining your framework of your workflow, so that you want a clean path. So if you're working on something like a VI where you're working either with Cubase, Logic, Pro Tools, whatever DAW you're using, your whole team's on board. You make sure that when you hit record for the use of virtual sound check, your capturing stage has been established, you're happy with it, and you don't expect any issues with it. Even then, when you do a virtual sound check, you switch away from that preamp, and we'll discuss this a little bit on Friday. If you feel like you could have done with another 5% gain, either up or down, but you're not clipping and it's not really a problem, don't touch it. Don't adjust your trim. Do something on your dynamic control or on your attenuate on your EQ or somewhere, make up the signal in your path that doesn't require your preamp. That way, when you switch back to the preamp, you're solid. You don't have to worry about having to change anything there or anything like that. But enough about that. Obviously, that's quite an interesting subject. We can go on with that for hours and hours and hours. I'm shooting a little bit different tonight. For those of you who noticed, two things. My beard's gone. My hair's nice and neatish. My angle's slightly different. I am currently shooting with the Shure MV88 camera kit. I'm going to switch over to another camera so you can see it. And if I zoom in, sorry, I have to manipulate on my screen here. I'm going to zoom in slowly so you can see there's the little MV88. It's got a nifty little tripod, Shure label, very nice little gimbal, which I'm not going to adjust now. Great holder for any smartphone device. And then rotatable mic holder with the MV88 in it. Lightning cable in here. It comes with the USB-C cable as well for other devices. You just have to have the Motif app on your phone to set up the microphone for all its different presets. It can be a figure of 8, Omni, cardioid, supercardioid, and you can also even adjust your width of your supercardioid. I've got it set to 60 degrees, which is quite narrow, so it's facing straight at me. I did the little promo ad this afternoon using this just handheld. This little tripod folds up nicely and you can actually use it as a handheld. So I'm going to zoom out again so you get a little bit of an idea of where I'm sitting. I am in my garage workshop, so this is my little setup. I usually use a different microphone on a stand. Got my Mac Pro here running that we normally run OBS on. I know some people have asked how we've been doing it. I'm using a different app on my phone that Brendan Ross put me onto actually. We had him on the episode the other night. It's called Switcher. It's a live streaming app. You can have up to 9 iOS devices controlled on the screen here. If I zoom in even further, you'll notice on screen here, I've got my name strap there, which I can take off. I can put in my Facebook tag, take that out. I've got my talkgp logo, put my name back in, put that back in. And you can have 9 camera sources. Now obviously on your phone it's quite a small real estate here. So I'm going to do this so I can combine those two and you can actually see how I'm working. It's a very seamless little piece of software, this. Very nice to use. I'll switch back to that one. It does crossfading for you. On the iPad it's got a great GUI to work in a director's mode even if you want, so you don't have to use your onboard camera. I've been making some tutorial videos with Johan doing director mixing, vision mixing, and with 4 or 5 iPhones doing over shoulders and all that kind of stuff. It's a great piece of software. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about tonight, we spoke about the virtual sound check that's coming on Friday, and a little bit of promo here on the MV88. It's a great little product. It's actually very compact. We did make contact with our MV5 winner already. We're going to get his microphone to him this week still. We'll try and see we'll put a picture of that on our Facebook page as well. So what I wanted to chat about is one of the things that came out in the discussions I had with Simon as well as MJ and someone else, and in some of the single discussions I've had, is the question around technical riders. And people thinking that technical riders is a set piece of information. If you're working with a band and you're fortunate enough to have a role or be able to play a role in setting up a technical rider or even just consulting on it, it's key that you understand how a technical rider gets perceived or where it goes to, so that you understand how to put it together. Often the first place that a rider will end up is with a booking agent or someone booking the band, so it'll be in the band's docket. Very seldom it will travel by itself. If you've got an artist that's being booked, he might have 2-3 pieces of documents, one being his fiduciary paperwork where he's talking about costings and invoices and all that. The other one will be around his logistical needs and those kind of things, and that's the one that you'll most of the time find your technical rider in. And then sometimes the technical rider is just completely separate. I have found more than once where I've arrived at a venue and the technical guys will pull out the one piece of document that doesn't have that on. It's got our contact information on and a rough description of what the band is, but the actual technical rider didn't make it because that was a third option. So I do encourage bands to try and stick to one document, one PDF. Don't make it too tedious. When you get to the technical aspects, be straight to the point. Don't hide around the bush. If you've got a 3-piece band, you must remember that people that read the rider very seldom have either heard of your band or worked with them before. So the more detail you put in there, the better. And you've also got to think generic in the terms of what your terminology is that you use. When you draw a stage plan, it might seem overboard to send a photograph or draw a very detailed plan. A lot of people just do block diagrams. They'll sort of block kit in the middle with a circle, little triangles for wedges and all that, and it's a very basic, and for you it makes 100% sense. You know the band backwards, and you don't realize what you didn't put in there was a 2-prong power adapter for the guitarist pedal, or even 110 volt if you're traveling with an international, or even considering things like placement of guitar amps spacing between band members, all that kind of stuff. So you need to try and think of a way to draw a detailed stage plan that when someone that hasn't worked with your band before sees it, you've got a key on the side that'll explain it if you aren't drawing in full 3D. But you think about power connections, you think about these days USB connections for iPad chargers, mic stands, but not just mic stands. You need to specify whether you want round bases, boom stands, tall boom stands, telescopic boom stands, and non-telescopic boom stands, because some artists do prefer either or. It's not just automatically that a guitarist that plays or a vocalist that plays guitar wants a long stem boom stand. I've seen plenty guitarists who play guitar on a round bass upright. They've just gotten used to it. The way that they use the mic technique, all that works for them. So you can't presume. You have to put it in there. Keyboards, the type of keyboard stands. You want single brace, double brace, 2-tier, 3-tier, height, the chair, pedals for keyboards, power connections, extra power connections, DIs, even your spare channels. I always have, from traveling with the artists where there's an acoustic front and a keyboard on the left, I'll work in on my channel list spare DIs and spare positions, and I'll plot them on the stage where I want the spare DI. And I know if I put the spare DI there, that can either be, the fact that it's a spare DI doesn't mean I'm going to use it for a guitar. It's a line that's been tested that's there. I can grab that and stick it onto a backing vocal. I can grab that and put it onto the guitar. I can use that for a talkback mic. I can use it for any source on that side of the stage, as well as a keyboard on the other side. Got a spare keyboard line, put in 2 extra DIs. You know, it's not because your keyboardist always brings another keyboard, but again, you've got 2 lines there which can be anything for you. You know, you might just add in something. So you've got to have some contingencies. Don't be outrageous. It's nothing worse than getting a rider from a band where it's very detailed, very clear. You set it up, and then the band arrives and only 2 band members. You know, so that happens, and there's ways to deal with that. When we do festival shows with limited time slots, things like that, bands will often do very specific songs that works with the crowd, and in those songs there might be an instrument that they don't use that's on their rider. So one of the things we tend to do is, whether we're doing TV shows or festivals, you know, once we know who the bands are, we try and make a point of checking elements on the rider which we think might be not essential for that specific opportunity. Now, you can't make the decision yourself. You know, if you hear they might be doing X song, you go, oh yeah, but he doesn't play acoustic in that song. That's not your choice. You know, management has to agree with that. Because if they're involved in the process and the band members get there and they go, oh, but we need an acoustic DI, then you can say, well, we spoke to managers, you guys are not doing that song. And then if it changes, there's no one upset. You can put a DI in, it's not an issue. But if you didn't discuss it or you didn't plan it, you know, it can become a problem. And vice versa. The most common thing that happens is out-of-date riders. Bands that put riders out. And where I've seen this happen most commonly is not actually the fault with the band or the management. The fault actually lies with the tech companies. You take a band, going to be, you know, Mango Groove. Everyone knows Mango Groove. You know, I've worked with Mango Groove since the middle 90s. I can probably draw up a channel list out of my head to a point. I haven't worked with them for a while, but I know the guys, you know, whether it's Johan Griesel or Earfit or a couple of different, or Vernie, some of the guys that work with it. We know the band well. So if you get a booking for a corporate and it's Mango Groove, you might have a rider on file from last year or from a year before, or from 2 years ago, and guys take out that and they go, well, it's Mango Groove, hasn't changed. But there might be a dep on the gig. They might have a stripped down piece. Now, Mango wouldn't probably do that, but you understand what I'm saying. So I've been in the scenarios often where, you know, I quote on gigs where I hear what the bands are, and I've got an idea of what they are. So we'll quote on basic backline and things like that, but we'll still make a point of asking for the latest rider. You know, because it's fair to the band, it's fair to the client that you're organized and you know what's coming. But back to the preparation of the rider. Microphone choices, and if you're in a tech company and you're doing rentals, probably the most annoying thing that you can get on a tech rider is the latest and greatest DJ gear, which 99.9% of the time is either not used or they don't know how to use it. Because it's the latest, they put it on a rider, they want it, the guys don't own it, they don't know how it works. You know, the amount of texts that are out there that are showing DJs how to connect or where to press, how something works. You know, I'm being generic now, but it happens, and we all know it happens. You know, and you want to, if you're booked for a high profile gig, you obviously want to put your best foot forward, and I understand that. But yeah, it does get annoying, especially you know, to buy a brand new Pioneer set, for example, is going to put you out 120, 140k for a full set. You know, so not everybody owns that. I don't own one. We rent in, we sub-hire from Fogtech or from Stylist or from MGG or wherever we can get hold of. And there's nothing worse than costing that into the client. You get it to the gig, you get there, and the guy goes, "No, I'll just run off my laptop," which has happened. You know, and it's like, now it's not your time to freak out and go scream and running down the passages naked, but just be aware that it happens. But if it's due diligence and you follow the plan, at least you can't get in trouble. I always tell my staff, you can't get in trouble for anything you've been told to do. You know, if you're actually doing what you're told to do, you can't get in trouble. Whoever told you is the person that gets in trouble. So just follow the instruction. When you put your riders together, like I said, be as detailed as possible and take it all the way through to, especially on stage side, on the monitoring side, be very specific for mono and stereo. Don't just go generic. If it needs to be stereo, put it stereo. If it needs to be mono, put it mono. Wedges, type of wedges. You can put preferences. Generally, where you go in this country, you sort of know which gear you're going to get. If you go to Cape Town, a lot of DMB. You know, in Joburg, a lot of JBL, a lot of L-Acoustics. You know, there's quite a few brands, Maya. So you do have the right to put down a preference, but the chance of getting a preference, if it's not a very high profile gig, and when I say high profile, it means it's got proper budget behind it, and we all know how that works. So obviously, if they're booking a high profile band, the chance of budget is good, but you got to put some alternatives. Now, there are a lot of bands in the world that just put this or nothing else, or we don't perform. If you're at that level, great. If you're not at that level, put one or two alternatives. If you're an engineer and they ask what console you want, you know, and you put console A and put B and C as well. I still have an analog rider where if for digital consoles I want this, and definitely not this. And when I say I don't want a certain console, most of the time it's got nothing to do with the brand or the actual console I'm telling them not to give me. But with that specific artist or band, I know that the console which they want to give me is not going to be able to do either the monitoring, channel count, the preamps or whatever is not going to work in that context. Nothing wrong with the console. It worked great for little corporates, for other things or whatever, but in this context it's not going to work. So put your ABC, and then I still have a channel list, and I say if I get an analog console, I want at least so many compressors, so many effects units in whatever configuration. Be specific as you can. Even have your insert on your channel list, so they know the guys can prep it for you. But there's nothing wrong with detail, but your detail has to be specific. You don't want to write essays. You don't want to come across as arrogant or you know, unnecessarily difficult, but specific, because there's nothing more pleasing to anybody than arriving somewhere. You know, I've had this a few times in my life where I arrive at a venue, the stage manager greets me, greets the band that I'm with, and they go, "Who's who?" Because they've never met us before, and you go, so, and then they just point you go there, you go there, you go there, and those team members, the tech team, walks up to you, introduces himself, and they know your show well because they've read your rider, they've communicated with you in advance. You walk up to the console, your show file is already loaded up. I can literally white glove it, and we all know what white gloving means. The RF tech gives me a little piece of paper with frequencies for my RF if I brought any RF, with alternative frequencies. You know, this happened in Nigeria of all places. There was a British company that came in to run the experience, and I was there with a couple of artists last year and the year before, international artists, and it was such a joy working with the guys. Steve and his team there was just, you walked in, and it's not about being spoiled. It's just they were ready, they were prepared. You can see they did their homework. They had paperwork. Everybody on stage had paperwork with drawings. And if I repositioned a keyboard or I moved a DI, they would note it on their papers, because obviously stage changes needed to happen, and everything would just be sorted. Now, will you get that everywhere? Not always, but I'm not scared to walk up and do the work myself. But if the guys are prepared for you, it makes, again, it's like doing your homework on a console. If you're prepared and you set up, you've done your pre-production prep and all that, you can get creative and you can really enjoy what you're doing. But it's also the one thing about a rider that has to make sense is your band has got to buy into it. So you can't just sit and do it on yourself and tell the band, listen, send this through. You've got to talk to the guys. You've got to make sure that they understand what you've got on there, how it works. Speak to them about their preferences. Even drummers, if it's sponsored drummers and it's not a camera gig, most of them are willing to play on something else, as long as it's good quality. Same thing with guitarists. What are the options? What's your primary option? What is a not negotiable? What is a negotiable? Someone like Brendan Ross, for example, a nice 61 key, unweighted keyboard, sponsored by Yamaha. He's used to playing it. He's walking over his memory stick. So if he gets the keyboard he asked for, again, it's workflow. It's just sorted. He gets there, plugs it in, plays. He said, doesn't have to worry about it. If he gets there and you put a keyboard there that in your mind is better, you put a montage in front of him, 88 key, it is a better keyboard in the sense where it sounds and what it can do, but not in his context. He can get sounds out of it, but it feels different, and he's got to spend 10 minutes, 20 minutes of his time prepping for the gig in a different way. So, got a comment here. Myself, pulling. Cut my hair myself. I did this. I was very nervous to do it by myself. I don't think it's straight. If you come close, you'll see it's a bit wavy and dodgy, and I've got some points sticking out, but I was shaking hand in the mirror there. I don't know how straight the back is over here. It's a number 3 on the back and sides, and then just roughly off the top. Oh, we can do it ourselves. Thanks for that. Anyway, so I hope that makes sense. I don't know if there's anybody with questions about anything that I've been talking about. I'm checking Johan's busy monitoring the stream there for questions. Put my name back on just for fun. Take out the Facebook strap. Throw that over shoulder one in there just for the fun of it. You guys can see my little setup. Go back to that one. Zoom that one back out. This little app also gives you full control over your cameras in terms of iris, color temperature, all that kind of stuff. I've got an auto at the moment, so they do look a little bit different because I've got different lights in front and back of me. But yeah, I think that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. If you need advice, or you want me to just jump in or whatever, if you want to email me, chat to me about technical items or any questions as well, if you want to send me something, I think to start somewhere, and I showed this a couple of weeks ago, and I should do another episode about that, just your channel list. If you spend enough time by yourself on your channel list, adding in columns and getting as detailed as you can of that, you can extrapolate 80% of all the data other than the sketch that you need for your band out of that. You can have a column for backline, you can have a column for mic leads, you can have a column for stands, etc., power, all that kind of stuff. So just keep going, keep enjoying it. Because again, like I said, if you do it properly, it gets read properly, and then you have a more pleasant gig. There was a comment the other night, I know Michael also said, so people don't respect the riders. It is true. It can get better, it will get better. I think one of the ways it'll get better is for guys that are sending out riders. If you are traveling with bands, if you start making a habit of communicating in advance, and not just to agents, speaking to, I've been in it long enough that if I know where in South Africa I'm going, and I get and I can, I don't even ask for names, I just ask which company is doing it, and I'll phone the owner of the company and say, just who's on that gig. He'll give me a name, phone the guy, I'll probably know him, And I'll just talk to them. Did you get my rider? Yes, you got the rider. It's this band. It's pretty much the same as last time. Just remember this time we've changed this, or, X, Y, Z. It's communication. And if we start doing that, especially if you start interacting with teams and guys you've not worked with before, you must remember, if a young company is coming in and they're starting to do corporate and they're starting to do gigs, riders are new to them as well. They've built up and they've bought gear which they think is the best in the world in their budget, and then you come in and they can take it quite personally. You're not telling them they got wrong gear or rubbish gear. It's not what you're asking for. So you need to be sensitive in that as well. But if we start getting more proactive, I said this when I talked about workflow, instead of being reactive, be responsive. Start making comments, phoning up, following up, and just from a sincerity point of view, make it clear to the guys, this is what me and my band needs to give a proper project and performance. And you'll get a good understanding. Paul Smith, TV tech riders are very different. TV tech riders it's not really a tech rider, it's more of a production Bible. Production Bibles are quite unique. If you think about a TV production with Obi Vans and the entire production, there's got to be a very definite supply demand for the whole thing to fit together. And then Puleng's asking, how do you approach a show with the wrong rider? So if they have given you the wrong console, well, you approach it from the left and you end up on the right. Look, if it's the wrong, the only wrong console is the one you don't know. So there I'm throwing the ball back in your court. You should be able to fulfill your duties on any gear given to you and understand the limitations that are facing you quite quickly. So in other words, if you get a console with too little channels or not enough monitoring outs or some kind of limitation. So yes, it's the wrong console, but there and then is not the time to fight about it, because what's going to happen? You're going to get everybody uptight. You're going to freak your band out. There's nothing worse than tech guy going to the band, in my opinion. And if you're a guy that does this, bless your darling heart, have fun with it. But you create 25 million% of your own problems. If you go to the band and you start telling them how bad the gear is, or how bad the crew is, or how bad everything is on that side of the fence, they've got enough to worry about on the stage. That's your job. That's what you're there for. Deal with it. You can go afterwards and say, listen, guys, I enjoyed that. I'm going to chat to management. Next time they must really make sure that the gear's right. We pulled it off. It was an amazing show. But you don't have to go and make a big deal about it. Obviously, you make a big deal in the right place. Speak to management. Make it clear to them after the fact when you can do something about it. That either show me the paperwork, how was it prepared, what went wrong, especially if there's account payers involved, and if it's a festival, the people need to know whether it was the tent company that supplied wrong, whether the paperwork was wrong, where's the problem, so that you can avoid that. But like I said, if you follow up, like I said, and you say, if you got X, Y, Z, did you see Mara? And you go, yes. I've had this. I phoned, spoke to a guy. He said, no, got your rider. Have you got these wedges? Yes. Have you got this? Yes. And it was just yes to everything. Even to the point where he said he had to rent in some stuff to fill my rider. And I was like, cool. On the way there, traveling with the artist, they go, and I said, no, I've spoke to the guy, everything's sorted. We got there. Yeah, needless to say, of everything that he said yes to, maybe one thing was accurate. Not the console he said, not the wedges he said, not the PA he said. And then once you're there, then he starts saying, yeah, no, we were going to, but. And then everything falls apart. So it's not the pleasant place to be. It does happen. And, those people, it's not a problem of supplying the wrong tech. It's a different skill set missing in their life on a personal level. It's called integrity, But if you can, make the best effort. But having said that, Puleng, I think, especially here in South Africa, where you're going, you will find decent kit everywhere, most of the places, and often might maybe not be your first or second choice, but it would be able to pull the gig off. So I I'm the kind of guy, you know, people say, don't be a pushover. Well, there's a difference between being a pushover in that situation and just taking what's in front of you and making the best of it, because we're here, we're now, there's no pause button, the gig's going to happen. You know, there are times where it's completely haywire, you know, and I've had to go to a management and I said, listen, this is not going to work. Literally, it won't work. It's not a matter of me adapting in a different way. We need to make another plan. And then we make another plan. But you need to be adaptable. I don't know if that answers. Graham Smith, tech writer is accurate for the band and engineer, and there's a last minute crisis where the engineer needs to replace. You are called up on the last minute. If I read this right, I don't know if this was a copy and paste on Johan's side or goeie Afrikaanse English. Basically what he's saying, the band writer is accurate, the band there, but you're a dep engineer. Last minute. I've been in that position a couple of times where, you know, for some rather hairy scenarios, the biggest thing I do is try and ask as many questions as I can of the engineer I'm replacing if I can speak to him. I was very fortunate for Chuck Harris to ask me to assist with Don Moen's stuff for about a year because he had some medical issues, couldn't travel. He's doing very well now. But I got to go to a couple of places around the world with Don Moen, and you know, I've worked with Don before, known him for many years, and I still, before the gig, sent messages through asking anything changed, anything new. Told me about a new DI they're using on the violin, XYZ, the band, you know, some was with band, some was without band, and I just asked them with the band. And then when I got to the band members, some band members I haven't met before, I have casual conversation if I can, whether it's in transport, on the plane, wherever you are, and just get a feel for the person from a communications perspective. That's, I think, more important. If you just nail them with a bunch of technical questions, they can't answer those. I mean, it's quite a unique way. You need to be a good communicator to figure out how it works, because if you can communicate properly with someone and you start working on a sound check, for example, and you know how they communicate, you can go a lot faster. If you just hit them with a bunch of questions and they sort of told you what they want in their wages, and then you stand there and you've done that and they don't get it or it's not right, communication is a big issue. You know, and then the communication is the issue, not the technical. So I think, you know, communicate. I've been in scenarios where what's on the rider is almost exactly what I wouldn't have chosen for the gig. But again, I wasn't part of that. I flow with it. I even went as far, asked with the one artist I was with, do you guys have a show file for this console? Because I've not worked on this console. I've not done this kind of show on this console before. And they didn't have one, so I downloaded the GUI, created my own, sent it through. You know, but it's a lot of communication. I think that's the thing. So, you know, as much as your tech writer is your communication, your ability to communicate is also key. I hope that makes sense to Graham. Which Graham Smith is that now? Is that Grampies or is that Cape Town? Anyway, Johan says he copies and pastes, so it's not him with the bad English. Well, thanks, guys. I think that's been some good questions. If you've got any comments or anything else on riders you want us to cover, I'm still sorry about not having done the second episode of the loudness. I know the first one went down very successfully. Tinus actually lives out in Rustenburg, and he's had power issues and signal issues beyond control, so we couldn't get him out yet. And now we're trying to see where the level 4 broadcasting stuff's going, so he needs to get back to his studio in Joburg. So we'll get him. I've sent him a message. I don't know if he's watching tonight. We'll try and see if we can get him on Thursday night. Other than that, remember, tune in on Friday morning. It's going to be around 10 o'clock. Marlon Green on drums. We're going to do a virtual sound check. We'll put a mic on Marlon. We'll do some Q&A as well. We'll try and see. We'll try and keep it not too long, and then we'll do a rebroadcast on Friday evening about that, 8 o'clock. Other than that, I think that's me for tonight. Appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate all the support. Put our Facebook logo back on and my name back on. Any questions about the technical that we're doing and how we're doing it, you're more than welcome to pop us a question, pop us a comment. I'll try and answer that. Thanks again to Waldemar for the microphone. Works great. It's not mine. It's on demo. We're using it to make our videos. And it's our prizes we're giving away. We'll announce probably before Thursday or Friday when the next competition will be for the second giveaway that we've got. And we'll let you guys know about that. Thank you for watching. Appreciate that, and I'll see you guys soon.